live webinar. So Abiola, you have the
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode, of course, of Let's Talk EHS, where we have conversations on safety, conversations on health, conversations on technology, and the systems that shape our lives. I am your host, Abiola Ayodele. And I have a wonderful guest in the house who, and it's a privilege to have her join me in this conversation. A few months ago, I had the opportunity to attend the National Safety Council Safety Congress, NSC Congress in Colorado. And like many people in the safety profession, I went there expecting conversations about regulations, compliance, technology, and emerging trends. And those conversations certainly they happened. But what stood out to me most was something much simpler that no matter the topic, whether it was artificial intelligence, safety management systems, risk assessment or leadership, the conversation always seemed to come back to one thing: people. And because of that, I, of course, don't joke with people. And one of the people in my life is Morgan, who is here as my guest on this episode. I met Morgan during the ASSP mentor mentee program, the mentorship program. And I'm sure she has a lot to say about herself, but I think I will give her room to just introduce herself. Morgan, can you just let people know who you are, please? Thank you.
Of course. Thanks, Aviola. Just again, as you mentioned, I have been, it's been a blessing to have been partnered with you through the American Society of Safety Professionals Ergonomic Mentorship Program that we just started this past year. Yeah, it's been great. So I live in Austin, Texas. I got my master's in public health at Texas A&M University. And I have been working in the insurance industry for the past decade. So, all things safety. I do have my CSP as well, but have been slowly and methodically becoming more on the ergonomics side of things, specialized. So, I also do have my CPE, the Certified Professional Ergonomist.
All right. Thank you so much, Morgan. So just to re-emphasize that I met Morgan through the ASSP Ergonomics Practice Specialty Mentorship Program as someone transitioning into environmental health and safety. I was looking for opportunities to learn from experienced professionals, and joining the mentorship program turned out to be one of the best decisions I could have made. Not only was I paired with an incredible mentor, Morgan, but I was also introduced to a way of thinking about workplace health that extends, far beyond compliance and injury prevention. So, Morgan, welcome again.
Yeah,
So
thank
when
you.
many people hear the word ergonomics, they think about office chairs, standing desks, or posture. But I feel that ergonomics is really about understanding people and designing work in a way that supports human health, performance, and also their well-being, of course. So today we'll be exploring what ergonomics can teach us about prevention, policy, and people. So one of the recurring challenges in both public health and workplace safety is that we often respond to problems after they occur. Someone develops back pain, someone experiences fatigue, someone gets injured, and then we look for solutions. But what if we approached workplace health effectively? What if the goal wasn't simply to react to injuries, but to design systems that prevent them from happening in the first place? That's where I think ergonomics offers an interesting perspective. And the whole summary of public health is prevention. So we believe in prevention, and we believe that prevention is better than cure. So Morgan, what would you have to say when we talk about prevention, how it begins long before an injury? For me, when we talk about prevention, we often think about training programs, personal protective equipment, PPE, or safety procedures. But ergonomics challenges us to think even earlier than those things I just mentioned. It asks whether the task itself, the workstation, the tools, the workflow, or even the work schedule were designed with human capabilities and limitations in mind. What do you think, Morgan, about this?
Yeah. Honestly, that's the thing that got me most interested in ergonomics. I mean, safety as a whole, very interesting. But I have chosen ergonomics for exactly that reason. I think if we can get into the prevention through design element of safety, you can really get to the root cause of even some other safety concerns like, the lacerations that are happening, the struck by potentials for forklifts. Falls from heights even, why does the person need to be over there? Like, if we can really start looking at the process as a whole, and I know even in safety outside of just ergonomics, we talk a lot about a systems-based approach to root cause problem solving. It's really impactful. So specifically for ergonomics, I wanna kinda back up and just mention like a definition that we use as part of our trainings. And if you look into like the root of the word ergos, meaning meaning law, I think, and nomos meaning no, ergos meaning people and nomos meaning the law of something like that. It's a Greek root, is the natural laws of work. So it's not just talking about the posture, the repetition, the force. It's talking about holistically the way that people do work and interact with their work environment. Um, so really, yeah, taking that step back is pivotal. I don't know if I'm skipping too far ahead, Abiel, if I
No,
was
no,
gonna
no. I
start talking
mean,
about
that's that.
standards, but
Of of course. I mean, we want to get to educate our people more. The length we can go, we just have to hit it right away. So don't worry if you're going ahead of me, I'll catch up. If I'm going ahead of you, you have to catch up. You know. So I have been looking at it. And in fact, that's what brought me to public health and making me to focus on environmental health and safety. How I remember when I was working full time as a journalist, I went to cover a story. It was a workplace accident that led to loss of lives, and that really got to me. But what was also fascinating about the whole thing was how the professionals came out to explain, mentioning some, terminologies, that just to explain to people what happened, why what happened. But what kept coming to my mind was you are telling us all of these after it had happened. How come we didn't know all of these before it happened? So I feel like we need to focus more and we shouldn't just come out to form like we are professionals because after the incident that happened, why not come out as a professional long before the incident happened? So how do you think organizations can actually inculcate this or bring this into their culture to ensure that prevention is better than cure? People shouldn't always wait till there is an accident. People should do everything. When I go to work, I want to go back home to my wife, to my child, to my family. So, how do we achieve that, ensuring that we prevent accidents and people go back home, if not the same way they came, better than they came, you know?
Mhm.
So, using
Yeah.
ergonomics.
That's that is it. That is the main, selling point to safety. I feel like that within my consulting with customers and companies, it's always send the employee back home in the same condition they came to work in, right? That's what we all hope. We don't go to work expecting, injuries to happen, but maybe historically we did, prior to the 70s, when OSHA was then formulated to try to give some of those standards kind of that I was alluding to. I often like to talk about ergonomics as still a very new and emerging Science, because we have OSHA standards around how to protect people from falling off of, buildings during construction, where we had many deaths associated with that kind of environment. We have standards to try to protect people from chemical hazards, and we have a whole industrial hygiene organization built around that with standards in place. You can use PPE for things like lacerations, and you know exactly how to target those because you can see them. And then when the person gets injured, they go to the doctor, they get stitches, they get healed up, and they're back at work. Honestly, for the prevention of ergonomics, I think a lot of our companies that are hiring employees are still quite uneducated on what causes these musculoskeletal strains and sprains, and then what to do about them because it was not included in the OSHA standard regulations. Now, there are more standards coming out. They're usually a little bit more industry specific, or state specific. If it's going to get into OSHA, like Cal OSHA does have a standard around hospitality and folks that are making beds in like a hotel environment. And then New York just came out with one for warehouse employees, which has been really interesting. So they have the New York Warehouse Worker Injury Prevention Program that's being required, because warehouse workers palletizing things day in and day out is causing musculoskeletal strains. Um, Working in insurance, I can tell you too from our own data statistics, it's about 1 in 3 of our work comp injuries are musculoskeletal related. So not just frequency, but then the severity too. Folks that do strain their back are going to be out of work for a certain amount of time, usually much longer than again someone needing to just go get stitches at the doctor. And this is a growing problem that finally I think our customers are starting to understand, but still they don't know what to do about it. So if you're wondering why can't we get ahead of this, what's the challenge? I think we're doing it right now. We're working on it. We're doing as much as possible to educate our customers, to understand the risk factors, and then providing new tools. So used to be you can get out onto the plant, hire ergonomists to come out and do some pencil paper assessments using some of the many tools that, if you'd like, we can talk about. But now we have cell phones that can take video, that can do so much better job of assessing a risk, as it's a dynamic movement, that can be then quantified, and we get a risk score at the end, and you can kind of do something with that. So I think we're almost there with ergonomics. We just have to keep pushing and educating our employers on that.
Okay, I believe a journey of 1,000 miles, starts with a step, and we're already taking that step. When I look at the broader part of EHS safety in particular, I realize that ergonomy happens to be one of the most neglected aspect of it, and for me, I think it is the most important. Because people focus on compliance, focus on evacuation, focusing on, so many other things in health and safety. But I believe one who has, when economics come to play, and we are able to use that as a prevention strategy, there are so many accidents that even happen on the field that wouldn't have happened. Somebody who has been sitting with a laptop for a long time, and there is this repetitive task or musculoskeletal strain, just like you mentioned, that may restrict them from carrying out certain activities when they go to the field. And that lead to a mistake, can lead to an accident that can end their life. So everything starts with ergonomics, so that people will be wholesome, so to say, as they step out to work, even on the field. That's what I strongly believe. As much as they neglect ergonomics, I feel it is the foundation of safety. When you get it
Yeah.
right with ergonomics, every other aspect, will be a walk in the park. That's one thing that I know. If prevention is our goal, then workplace design becomes more than an engineering decision. It becomes a health strategy. And once we start thinking about workplace health as a system, as a system issue. So to say, the conversation naturally expands beyond the physical environment. We see the psychosocial hazard. I think you and I, when we're having conversation, we spoke about the psychosocial hazard, the mental health of workers, people making errors at work because their mental health, is not balanced. So
Hmm.
ergonomics helps check all of those things
Yeah.
before they lead to accident that we can no longer control. So I think ergonomics should be like the starting point for
Hey,
any
I agree
safety
with
plan.
you. We should put that on a flyer. Yeah, the psychosocial element's a very interesting one that is not really talked about in any specific industry or any specific specialty. Like, if you're really gonna dig in and try to prevent, slips and falls or, falls from heights, again, the lacerations and stuff, they're not really talking about. But where was that person's head when they decided to make that, you know, mistake? And I'm
Exactly.
not gonna try to blame the employee for, something, but if it's a system approach, many things were going on in this person's life and in the work environment, that could have led to that. Well, ergonomics is tied very closely with human factors, and if you don't know too much about human factors, it's really the way that humans interact with a system. So, started back when we were trying to put, like switches and controls in an airplane, and all the buttons look the same. For example, you're easily going to mistake the landing
Sure.
gear for, whatever other button you need if they all look the same color or size, or shape. So, trying to go into that design and make it easier for the employee to make the right choices, to eliminate the or reduce the human error component within something. So as we also, I think, tend to grow more and more into our manufacturing, you'll find that the psychosocial piece of is the employee's mind being challenged enough during this task, or are they just pushing widgets down a conveyor? Maybe we need to improve some job enlargement and have them trained in different things. Well, that also can lead to job rotation so that an employee's muscle group, if they're using their arms for 2 hours a day, let's have them do something that allows their arms to rest and puts them in a different area of work so that they can use their legs. But that also helps shift up the monotony of maybe an 8-hour work shift or longer. Some people do 12-hour work shifts. That kind of allows your mind to wander, or maybe isn't as satisfying for the employee. So there's also the ideas within psychosocial of absenteeism, not showing up to work, or presenteeism, which is you show up to work but you're just not really involved. You're not
Involved.
actively there. And I think a lot of employers probably can think about some examples of that within their workplace. And if you want to know how to, motivate an employee to do a little bit better efficiency or quality of work, let's turn back to ergonomics and see if we can improve the job design that they're working with. And yeah, that would be great. So I think a couple of things that I didn't touch in my original definition of ergonomics is we are always trying to keep quality and productivity in mind too. It is the holistic view of the job. It's not just trying to make sure that the person feels less fatigue or tired at the end of the day. But we will work with a company, an employer to make sure that they are also achieving quality efficiently.
Yeah, I was going to mention that because when you mention economics to many employers, they they want to shy away from it, stay away from it because they feel it will not achieve productivity, and
Mhm.
then it will tell on their, on their organization. But I like what you said, that ergonomics is not just selfish, is not selfish at all. So it looks out for the people and also looks out for the organization so
Mhm.
that, we can all achieve, maximum progress, so to say. So I like that you mentioned that. So that organization, we know that ergonomics is your friend, not an enemy. Ergonomics is not
Yes.
out there to hamper your productivity. In fact, ergonomics is there to foster your productivity, to increase your level of productivity. Because if you go to many organizations, if you check their safety department, they have the compliance, they have the environmental health, they have every other thing except economics. And then
Mhm.
you want to ask the question, how how are you able to handle all of this? Economy is actually the starting point. There is nothing anybody can say. I believe economics is the starting point of safety. When we get it right with economics, we get it right with other ones. And that would take me to the second conversation I plan to bring up, which is the role of policy in workplace health. We are talking about this, and then you mentioned earlier about NIOSH, how that economics is not in the plan, even OSHA, I think. Even if they make mention of economics, it probably just 1% out of 100, while they focus more on the other aspect of safety. So I believe that there's a huge role policy can play in workplace health as it relates to ergonomics. When we think about ergonomics, we often focus on equipment and workstation design, but many workplace risks are influenced by decisions that happen far away from the workstation itself. Decisions made in their with their lawmakers, you know. So many workplace risks, they are actually influenced by those decisions. And those decisions happen far away from the workstation itself. You know, for example, scheduling practices, workload expectations, staffing levels, break policies, like you mentioned, reporting systems, leadership priorities. All of these decisions, they shape how work is experienced by employees. In many
Mhm.
cases, workplace health, workplace health outcomes are influenced as much by organizational policies as by physical workplace conditions. So, I want us to explore how policy decisions can either support or undermine worker health, and what organizations can do to create systems that promote long term well being.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I think this is a key area because aside from those few states or industries that I'm talking about that have put actual policies in place, which again still needs enforcement, but it's holding someone's feet to the fire to do something about it. Um, OSHA can cite some egregious appearing risk factors for ergonomics under the general duty clause. So keep that in mind too. But I mean, overall, just it's up to the employer. It really is. You're getting losses in this area. You're getting injuries. You're having difficulty hiring people because they don't want to work such a strenuous job. So take it all the way back internally and create an ergonomics program. You have a bloodborne pathogens program. You have a forklift operator certification program.
Yeah.
You have these other programs in place based on your risk. Create an ergonomics program. And it would be written, it would outline the scope, it would outline who's responsible for what. And honestly, like the ones that we recommend is to either utilize your safety committee or create an ergonomics committee that is cross-functional and definitely includes like your operations and engineering team. So again, you might not have an ergonomist on staff, you probably have a safety person, and you probably have someone who is creating a schedule of, like you say, shift work or maybe job rotation, but maybe they've put metrics in place that say you have to produce this many widgets within an hour or within a day. And we need to start taking a step back and look at that and see, is that creating some unreasonable expectations for our employees to work really fast. Maybe they're now, instead of carrying one thing at a time that was under the recommended weight limit of 10 pounds, they're now carrying 3 or 4 because they're trying to be efficient and to keep up with these metrics. So it's looking at the metrics that are already in place, I think is pretty important. And yeah, I think I was gonna had another thought there, but I'll come back to it.
It's all right. It's no problem. Yes, I strongly believe that the decisions are made far away from the workstation. There is a need to those the decision makers, there's a need for them to come to the workstation so they
Mhm.
can better make, they can make better decisions. Because I've seen that a lot, especially in corporate safety. Someone with their suit and tie, sitting in the office under full AC, controlling or trying to criticize the man that has his, boots on ground on the field under the hot sun doing the work. He sees what you can see. You are just in the four walls of your room, of your office, and then you are trying to dictate or to control what is happening outside there. You
Mhm.
understand what I'm trying to say? So I
Yeah.
feel like if you really want to make the policy, go to the workstation, see what is happening. And I've seen organizations have meetings, making decisions, and they don't even include those who are on the field. I
Mhm.
mean, let them have one or two representatives to be there so you can feel what they feel. And there's this thing they call Gemba walk. I'm sure you've heard about that. It's I think a Japanese coined from Japanese language, which means the real place. So in safety, they call it Gemba walk, where you have to go to the workplace and see what is happening there, feel what the workers are feeling, so that will help you make better decisions. You can't just stay in the office with your suit and tie making decisions for those who are in the hot sun. Go there, see what is
Mhm.
happening, see how things are done, ask questions, get to know, you know, get to, hear from them, their own suggestions. How can we make this thing better? What are the challenges you are facing? And all of that. So people just make decisions without going to where it is happening to really know if the decisions they are making really match with what is happening, on the field. So I feel like the policymakers need to do better too and find a way to get to the field or have people who are on the field be represented when
Mhm.
it comes to making the policy. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly it. That's why, as part of like an ergonomics program, we highly encourage a cross-functional team, including, like you say, like the front line, the worker doing the job should be a part of it so that they have that opportunity to talk to the operations manager and the engineer and the whoever else needs to be involved. Maybe a lot of times in ergonomics, it comes from I need to get this box from receiving to warehousing, maybe to manufacturing too, and then out to shipping. That's 4 different departments. You need them all to collaborate and talk about, "Why is this box coming all the way to, shipping on the output and it's over 50 pounds?" And I'm just using 50 pounds as a standard blanket weight there. Not me saying that everything under 50 pounds is safe, okay? So, but if it is, we start to ask, why does it need to be that weight? Could we have broken this into 2 25-pound boxes? Or how is it getting from one place to the next? Do we actually need a person and an order picker? And maybe that means actually going up to heights too, or now we have to train them on fall arrest, protection and everything. And we can kind of eliminate that if we figure out this why. But this is what I mean by looking at the whole system too, and it's the exact same thing you're talking about. Is get a cross-functional team together, bring your minds together that otherwise wouldn't interact. A lot of times in some like distribution center type warehousing, our customer is saying, well, we have to ship it out like this. It has to be on a pallet this high, this big. It has to maybe not be palletized and just thrown into the shipping container. So it's all done parcel by parcel. Say, can we ask their customer why it needs to happen like that? Like maybe on the back end of all these pallets going into the shipping container, their employees would appreciate them come back out on pallets too. One operator using a forklift to pull out a pallet's going to take a lot less time and be better quality than to put 3 people, stacking boxes into the shipping container and be a lot faster too. So, have we asked those questions? And we can. It's not up to the employee. The employee probably has the same question every time they're doing that task for 8 hours a day. They're wondering, "Why can't I use a forklift to put this box in here?" But they don't have the connection and the forum, to the operations manager to really leverage that point and ask why. I remembered what I was gonna say, and it was gonna be about construction. We get pushed
Okay.
back a lot from construction on doing ergonomics, so we try maybe not to use the term ergonomics, but which I do hope is going to be a word that's not such a bad, word in the future. But our construction group, they have pre-planning meetings, and not everyone's represented at the pre-planning meeting either. But you're going to need to sit. Like, it's nice for me as a consultant or the safety person to be a part of those pre-planning meetings to ask about the crane schedule. I have a pallet of masonry block that came in on one side of the facility and it needs to be taken over to the other side of the facility. Um, can we use a forklift, an industrial forklift to get it there? Because too many times on construction sites, I've seen employees, multiple employees taking a lot of time carrying blocks of masonry like through a building to get it to the other side. So just talking about the planning, talking about that prevention. Another kind of word that people are familiar with is lean or Six Sigma, 5S. All of these ways of reducing waste within a process definitely comes into play when we're talking about ergonomics because there's a lot of wasted motion in our processes. And that's where like some people come in and they talk about time studies and they want to see where they can gain some efficiencies. And instead they start throwing metrics at it and say, we're not moving widgets out the door fast enough. Let's put a metric and then try to reward people for doing 10 a minute. Instead, figure out where the extra motions are. Is that person having to walk across the facility to go get the tool that they need? Maybe they're choosing not to use the dolly because it's not stored in the right area. And so I don't know. There's just so many things that could be reduced before um, that person sitting in the nice office with AC just makes some blanket statements.
Exactly. My one of the things my supervisor said to me, I'm currently doing my internship. So one of the things my supervisor said to me, he said, "Don't be a safety cop." And he was just sharing many stories with me, how many safety guys would just be a safety cop. He even mentioned one. I don't know where that happened, that the guy, probably because he was once a police officer, but now a safety person, he wouldn't go to the field. He would stay from afar and use his binoculars to to be observing the workers there and start scoring them and then write
Oh,
them up later on that you did
oh,
this, you did that. So my supervisor said, don't be a safety call. Go there, ask questions. Why are you doing this the way you are doing it? They may not even know. They may think that is the right way of doing it. That's where
mhm,
you get to know if they are doing the right thing or if they are deliberate or is just from the place of ignorance. That will
mhm,
give you an idea that, okay, we need to design a training program to let these people, to be aware that this thing is an unsafe practice. You
yeah,
you you understand what I'm saying? So he said, don't be a safety cop. Go there, ask questions. I was with someone and they were reviewing a PVC, preventable vehicle collision
mm,
from a camera. So they were wondering why there was a collision between the worker and a private car, a private vehicle. So the one from the corporate office is like, what was he looking at? It was just blaming. But I also saw from
mhm,
the point of a safety person who had been on the field. He said, I already met with this person. Yes, he made the mistake, but this was what happened. Why he made this mistake. Moving forward, this is what we'll do. That
mhm,
person had some issues that were really affecting his mental health, which
mhm,
the organization did not pay attention to, and that affected him and affected the organization, by extension, so to say. You get. So I feel, just like my supervisor said, don't be a safety cop, go to the field,
mhm,
get to know, feel what they are feeling, know what they know to be sure that they know what they are supposed to know. So I feel like the more we examine workplace health, the clearer it becomes that people don't experience safety in isolated pieces. They experience the entire system, just like
mhm,
you mentioned, which brings me perhaps to the most important question of all. which is my last question or the last conversation we're gonna have before we round off this meeting. I want to talk about designing workplaces around people, and I think that is what ergonomics is all about. For
Mhm.
decades, organizations have asked workers to adapt to the demands of work faster, work longer, work harder. But what if we reversed that thinking? What if organizations design work around human needs, human capabilities, human limitations? And you mentioned as technology, automation, artificial intelligence, and new ways of working continue to transform workplaces. Organizations have an opportunity to rethink how work is designed. I believe the future of workplace health may not simply depend on better equipment or better technology. I believe it strongly depend on how well we understand the people those systems are meant to serve. So we shouldn't just focus on the system. We should also pay attention to the people that the system will serve. So I want us to talk about that, how as public health folks, we are in the people's business. And then we need to design the workplace to fit in with the people, not to tell the people and impose the workplace on them. What do you think?
Mhm. Yeah. No, I think, again, just talking about work environments are changing. I don't think you can go anywhere without hearing about AI and how that's going to affect, anyone's work, at this point. But then people start to say, okay, it might replace some jobs, but to use it instead as a tool to keep the worker in the system that is work, is important. And I think similarly, when we make some maybe in equipment recommendations that do involve investment, it does not always need to, or really often doesn't, eliminate a job. It is just asking that the person might turn from being a laborer on an assembly line to the operator of the machinery. It might need a little bit of additional training, coaching, to get that person to understand the new tool or system. But this is something that we as humans who have been working for many, many years have been doing as well. Like when the Industrial Revolution replaced a lot of jobs, but we survived. We found a way to change some of those styles of working. Thankfully, we don't put kids in coal mines anymore and other hazardous things, coming up with fall protection for iron workers. So we're not falling off of buildings so much anymore. I think this is just the next one that we really need to take a hard look at and say, who is trying to work in these jobs? I read something somewhere that said that the newest generation, Gen Z, is more readily than folks in the past or the millennials and Gen Xers going into the vocational trades, which is great. I think we need more people in those realms. I think a lot of people were pushed into college, 4-year universities or more, and still didn't really know what they wanted to do.
Sure.
Maybe a trade school is a great place to be, but the other thing is those folks have seen their parents and grandparents go to work in strenuous environments for many years and are looking at that like, do I wanna be fatigued after an 8 or 10-hour shift and not be able to come home and, you know, do whatever extracurricular thing is with my kids? Or something that we talk about in ergonomics is, yes, you can lift that 50-pound weight right now, but do you wanna be able to lift your grandchild when you're older? Like, you need to maintain your body, and not just really use it as a machine, right? So I am highly encouraging our employers to invest in equipment or automation, things like that, training of their employees to operate the machinery, design an area that prevents and reduces those unnecessary motions, and you will likely be able to hire more people more easily. Like construction workers, HVAC technicians, they want to work. They are going to school to work, but they're going to pick the employer that makes their job the least strenuous.
True, true. Just like employers can choose their employees too can choose their employers. You know, I have a research that I'm working on, and I'm sure I share that with you. I am looking at how organizations can do better, and I think for me, I have huge imaginations and I imagine things a lot. And from there, I get ideas on things. Either they are possible or they are not. I mean, if you can think it, then it is achievable. It may not be now. Before now, nobody believed that we could have something that will be flying in the sky now that we have
Mhm.
airplanes. So maybe in the next couple of years, what I think won't be achievable will later be achievable. So
Yeah,
when I think
someone's gotta
about
think
them,
it.
exactly. So I believe you can, think about it. It is achievable. So I was thinking about, and that will also make me talk a little bit about technology, and then we'll round off. Uh, I was thinking about, I think I discussed with you the middleman. Most organizations, they focus on the capability of workers, the functional capacity of workers. And that's where the FCE comes in, the functional capacity evaluation. And they do that basically on return to work assessment or employment screening. When you are newly
Mhm.
employed, they do functional capacity evaluation on you, or if you were away from work and now you want to resume back to work, they do functional capacity evaluation. But I am looking at something beyond that. What if we do functional capacity evaluation quarterly? Where we get to know the state of the people that are working. I believe that the same guy who did the same task yesterday may not have the capacity to do the same task today. Between yesterday and today, so many things had happened. Mental health issue must have happened because he went back home. Maybe some things happened in the house that started affecting him, or some things happened at the workplace. Between the time of leaving the work, coming home, and from home going back to work, many things must have happened. So we shouldn't just assume that because he was able to carry that task out successfully yesterday, that he will be able to do same task today. So many things would have happened. I was sharing with someone, how a friend told me about a nurse who made an error at work and it led to the death of a patient. What happened? Because the nurse figured about a family member who something happened to them, and that messed up with their mind and they couldn't concentrate at work, and because of that they had committed an error at work that led to the death of a patient. So I am looking at a time where we have a technology. Before you enter your place of work, there is a technology that scans your capacity for that day and then suggests what task you are able to do that day. What do you think about that thought?
Yeah, I mean, that would be amazing. In addition to, wouldn't it be nice if our employers did check in on our mental health even quarterly?
Exactly.
Because that psychosocial risk is that thing that really has yet to be talked about. And I think a lot of people are ready to talk about it. I mean, I know enough people in management too that are like, that have direct reports who used to achieve the metrics routinely, and then that's their only metric for seeing that something might be happening with their employee because they're not achieving as much anymore. And again, it's a lagging indicator, the same way
Sure.
injuries are a lagging indicator. So absolutely, if we could get something, pie in the sky, great idea, someone will take that and run with it and see what they could do better, to implement it. But some sort of diagnostic preventative assessment, to figure out if someone's capacity is, maybe not just the same, but within ergonomics, the other concept that we train on is demand versus capacity. So, are the job demands and the job requirements greater than that person's capacity? We talk about that all the time. How do you know the person's capacity? Some employers, can ask in pre-screening, pre-hire that someone be able to lift 50 pounds, but who all's also just going to make sure that they could lift 50 pounds that day for that one test, right?
True.
Can you do that repetitively over many, many years? Can you still do that now, 5 years into the job? Um, that's a big question. So, doing something like a functional capacity, which we do already do for return to work, you got injured, you go to your doctor, your doctor says, yeah, maybe you used to be able to lift 50 pounds, or that was your demand, your job expectation, but I need you to lift no more than 10 pounds for this job. And now a lot of employers are trying to figure out what light duty or modified duty can I provide to allow for this worker to continue working, which again is where I tend to say, can we just make the jobs easier for everyone? Why are we waiting until we get to that point of injury or mental fatigue, strain, stress before we're addressing this? But yeah, I mean, the functional capacity diagnostic would be amazing.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, and I know that many employees will be scared. They don't want to lose their job, so they try to hide their capacity from the employees. So, but
Mhm.
the functional capacity evaluation officer, who will be the middleman, will not be friends with the employee, neither friends with the employer. He is just the middleman who gets to observe the employee, get to know their capacity, but won't tell the employer that this is this person's capacity. It will only advise the employer. This person can only handle this task for now until further notice. So if we have a system that can help set that up, I mean, I'm working on that research, and I'm sure when I publish it, it will be an interesting read. All right. So watch out
Mhm.
for it.
Yeah.
So the functional capacity evaluation officer, does the work where he gets to know about the worker's capacity and then advise the employer on. So the employer does not know what is wrong with the employee. He only knows that this is what the employee can do for this time. So, and I think if organizations start doing that quarterly, they may want to look at the cost part of it, but in the long run, it will pay off. That I am so certain about. Ultimately, ergonomics is not just about posture. It's not just about chairs. It's not just about workstation adjustment. It's about creating an environment where people can perform safely, effectively, and of course, sustainably. So it's about recognizing that human well-being is not separate from organizational success. In fact,
Mhm.
I believe that it is foundational to it. So, as we conclude today's conversation, one idea stands out. The healthiest workplaces are not the ones that respond best to injuries. They are the ones that intentionally design systems to prevent harm before it occurs. So, whether we are discussing safety, public health, ergonomics, or organizational culture, the underlying principle remains the same. People should not be expected to adapt to poorly designed systems. Systems should be designed to support people. That is what I think. So, final word from you, Morgan, before I let you go for today.
Yeah. I think just keep spreading the good word that is ergonomics. It's not a bad word. It's not only office. It's not just sitting in a chair and at computer workstations. Out there in our industrial facilities, you can find easily more than one ergonomic risk factor. Again, lifting, carrying, pushing, pulling, awkward postures of reaching, bending to the ground, twisting. These are things that everyone does every day. But when you start to add force and repetition and long duration, and then the psychosocial bit to it too, just educate as much as possible. Educate your employers, your employees that this is there, and then include them in trying to come up with some solutions. They don't always have to be huge, break the bank investment solutions. It could be, how can we just stop you from having to walk from one area to the other and use a pallet jack?
Morgan, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and perspective today. And also, I'm sure next time when we call on you, you will answer us. Thank you so, so, so much for
Yeah, thank
joining
you
us
for
today.
having me. It's been great.
Awesome, awesome. And thank you to our listeners for joining us for another episode of Let's Talk EHS. So you get to see more of this episode, all right? I am Abiola Ayodele, And until next time, I want you to keep asking better questions, keep challenging assumptions, and keep the conversation going.
So, Abiola, I
Yes.
just wanted to see if do you have a moment to ask if there's been a few questions put into the chat, and I was wondering if you or Morgan would like to answer them.
All right. Listeners, if you have questions, if you want to ask, you can just drop the questions. And Morgan is here and I'm here. So you're in safe
Okay,
hands.
wonderful. So we have a question from Paola and Paola Acevedo, and she asks, is it that ergonomics is considered expensive or cost prohibitive, or has this just not been thought of before? Why is this missing in workplace safety? Why is it overlooked?
Okay, Morgan, you want to go
Yeah.
first?
I think both. I think it really depends on the company, the safety team, the management, who's in the employee's court to, look into where the injuries are coming from. I consult with employers of all different shapes and sizes. The small mom and pops usually don't have a very robust training outside of some OSHA training, and so it just has not been thought about. And then our larger customers, they do tend to think that if they hire an ergonomist or train people in ergonomics, that they're going to just throw robotics at them and automation, and so they don't even want to touch it. We try to make our recommendations on like a short term, mid-term, long term, good, better, best type solution. So it really just depends on where you're getting your information from and who you're talking to. But I still stand by, I think it's just people not really being educated on it, and thinking that it is too big of a burden to deal with. They see again, musculoskeletal disorders, so it's the muscle, the skeleton, the things that you can't really see. I always get a little hesitant when an employer, mostly like within like the HR realm, maybe they're not a safety person, tends to just assume that someone threw their back out or strained their shoulder over the weekend and now they're trying to make a workers' comp claim for it. That's not necessarily the case. So having a safety culture, a welcoming environment, where the employee feels comfortable coming to the HR representative or whoever and telling them, I have pain, I have fatigue, I have discomfort before it gets to that point, is really helpful and beneficial. But again, I still think the HR person might look at that situation and say, well, what do you want me to do about it? I don't know. So leaning into the resources that you do have to get educated on ergonomics and not thinking that it has to be a huge expense.
True. I like you said, education is the most important thing when it comes to this. Even for you to know if it is because it is expensive or cost prohibitive, you know, you need to be educated because sometimes you think it's expensive and you later realize after being educated that, oh, it may even look expensive, but in the long run, it pays off because when you eventually have accident at workplace, you're going to pay more than what you were supposed to pay to prevent that accident from happening. So I think I would tilt more towards education. When you educate people, not just the people, even organizations, to let them see. And I remember I said it earlier that organizations think that ergonomics is against them, but ergonomics is actually for them. So they want productivity and they think ergonomics may hamper their productivity. But when we educate them, they get to know that with ergonomics, they're going to do better even with their productivity. So I think education is the best thing to do right now to let organizations see these things and be rest assured that it's not that expensive. Even if it is, in the long run, it pays off.
Yeah, I'll throw one more thing out there too. If you think a company or an organization is just resistant to it, then hire an ergonomist and have them come in and show you what they know, show the company what they're seeing. And a lot of times, I know we do provide a return on investment calculation for any recommendation that we're providing because we use, if you look into like the National Safety Council, like average cost of a low back strain, it's close to $30,000. you then start to consider the indirect cost on top of that, and maybe you get some operational gains out of it. You can use that proactively to explain that this lift table is not going to be the big expense that you think it is.
Of course.
Wonderful.
From Yes, what's the next question if we have?
So, and then we have another question from Sapiba Yahan. And they say, first of all, great podcast, enjoying and learning so much so far. While volunteering with the American Red Cross and supporting the mental health needs of disaster survivors, I recently had the opportunity to speak with several blue-collar workers affected by a tornado. Hearing about the stress, uncertainty, and emotional strain they experienced made me think about psychosocial hazards in the workplace. We often focus on physical hazards, but stress, workload, and burnout can also affect employee safety. What is one practical step organizations can take to address psychosocial hazards before they begin impacting performance and well-being?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big one. Again, that really hasn't yet been talked about very much, but we are starting to talk about it. So your question is pretty poignant, and I would encourage you to also seek out some things that other organizations are doing, but it's still pretty new. The best that I've seen is really having a really strong wellness program, or you could call it like a health program as well through your human resource department. Having someone that they can talk to through like EAP, the employee, can't remember what that acronym is, but a lot of organizations offer a certain number of like therapy or counseling sessions included as part of their employment. That's always great. And again, just building in whatever way you can a good safety culture to where if an employee feels that they can come to their supervisor or manager and express that they're having this stress and emotional time, that the employer is not just going to say, well, get back to work. That's not my problem. Like being a little more open-hearted, and then supporting your supervisors in how they can have those conversations too. So there's some training. I know like LinkedIn offers some good training, but maybe through your human resource department, you could find some training for supervisors on how to be um, kind of that listening voice when someone comes to you. I would also encourage everyone to look into construction, either through OSHA or through who's the construction organization? It's like CWCP or something, because construction has been talking about this for a long time. At least for the past few years, construction, mental health, and specifically suicide is a growing trend in workplace fatality. And so that industry is addressing it and finding different ways to do so. I can't necessarily quote a specific action step, but look there if you're curious.
Yeah, thank you, Morgan, for that. I also feel that just like you said, organizations need to have that safety culture and look at it from their a wholesome point of view. Just look at it from every angle, and you're not just checking boxes. You are really, delving into safety as a whole. Morgan is an expertise in ergonomics. I am a generalist in safety, and I know the importance of ergonomics. And when it comes to mental health and psychosocial hazard and all of that, especially mental health, I feel like organizations, and you can also say something to that, Morgan. Um, I don't know, maybe this generation or generations before now, people tend to discriminate. People who talk about mental health. Even now, we still, even though it has reduced, but people still try to feel like if you are talking about your mental health or you are saying you have mental health issue, people tend to discriminate or criticize you. So many people would rather keep that to themselves. I also feel organizations are not sure of people's stance on that, so they are not even really sure if they are to bring that so it will make them uncomfortable. But organization can go far, can do better by getting to get people's opinion. If we bring mental health program, what do you guys think? So that will give you an idea of how to build a mental health program too in that organization. So you don't just go with the assumption that people are not going to feel comfortable if we start talking about mental health. So let's just talk about it on the surface and not go too deep. But get to know people's opinion, your workers' opinion. What do you think about mental health? If we start talking about mental health, are you going to be comfortable? And you'll be shocked the number of people that will sign up. People want to, really talk about what is bothering them, just have that. You understand what I'm trying to say? So that's what I feel, is happening. What do you think about that, Morgan?
Yeah, I mean, and again, if you as a supervisor or manager don't feel comfortable, then at least receiving the request for, "I would like some additional guidance in this area," and knowing who to send them off to instead of just ignoring it, which is what we do as safety professionals anyway. I can't know everything. I specialize more in ergonomics, but if someone comes to me with an industrial hygiene question, I'm not just gonna say, "Well, that's an exposure, that's a hazard that I don't know about, so let's ignore it." I'm gonna go try to find an industrial hygienist to really ask you those questions that would be beneficial. So that's where, again, if you're getting more of this in your workplace, then maybe it is your job as the safety person to go ask your management, because that's kind of how employees get up to the higher rungs of management is through that chain of command. So it's your job as their manager to go address it to higher management of, can we get an employee assistance program started with our human resource department or whatever. So yeah.
All right. Do you have any other question?
Those were all of the questions. That was such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for such a great engagement online. I really feel like, Aviola, you have started your webinar with, it's going to be a hard show to follow. This was great. And
Awesome.
lots of really great feedback from the audience. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be having 2 more webinars next week that are very similar to this one. So I hope you'll be joining us. We've been sending out some promotions for those as well. And thank you for all of your support. And thank you for such a great program today again. Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, Morgan. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you guys as well. Appreciate
All
it.
right.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Bye.
Yes. Yeah.
You're muted, Dr. Sassy.
Oh, we always say when folks come and join us that they become part of the VCPH family. So we look forward to seeing you again. Yep.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Abiola.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All
Morgan.
right. Goodbye.
Bye.